In this episode, the mod bug bites. Oh, and this stuff doesn't work at all. Well, it was worth a shot. Let's go. In our last episode, we got the Figgy up in the air and performed a thorough inspection while taking care of maintenance items and a bunch of small repairs to make sure the Fig is safe and reliable. Now, I know in the last video I promised to take you along for a test drive, but the truth is, the mod bug has been gnawing at me the entire time I've owned this car. Look, the problem is that when I see a valve cover that says turbo on it, I'm immediately transported to a fantasy world of endless possibilities. A land where rivers of turbochargers flow over a wonderful waterfall of torque and horsepower. A world of enchantment where you can turn the boost up as high as you want and never go lean. Welcome to Boostopia. Come frolic in this magical world with me, won't you? So yeah, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to make a few small upgrades and improvements here and there. So let's get to work. First on the list is a boost gauge. The Fig isn't equipped with a factory boost gauge, and after all of our fixes and such, I wanted to monitor our engine vacuum as well as get an idea of how the turbo was performing. Finding off-the-shelf gauges that match the Figaros perfectly isn't really possible, but I think I found the next best thing while browsing summitracing.com. This is the Autometer 2 1/16" mechanical boost and vacuum gauge in their Arctic white color. Included are all the parts necessary to install it in just about any turbo or supercharged vehicle. Once I got the gauge out of the box, I was really impressed with the look. The beveled chrome outer trim ring and curved glass were cool details, and the white gauge face color was actually pretty darn close to the Fig's factory gauges. To complement the gauge and match the look of the Fig's interior, I picked up this chrome mounting cup also from Summit Racing. Installing the gauge was really simple. I just teed off the factory fuel pressure regulator line and ran the tubing for the boost gauge from the engine bay through an existing access hole in the firewall and then under the Fig's dash. When it came to mounting the gauge, I wanted it in an area where I could eyeball it if needed, but also in a spot that wouldn't stand out at all. Oh, and I definitely didn't want to drill any holes in the Fig's stylish interior. So here's the spot I chose. It may seem a little odd at first, but it's out of the way. I was able to use an existing hole, and it's still very functional. From the driver's seat, it's easy to see and doesn't get in the way. Up next is the air intake system. Look, it was just bugging me. Too many twists and turns and turkey necks in there for my liking. I mainly took exception to this resonator box, which in my opinion exists only to filter out and rob me of the joyful turbo noises that I love so dearly. Now, as you can imagine, performance catalogs and websites aren't exactly brimming with high-flow air intake systems for the Figaro. The good news is, I keep way too much old junk around, and I think I may have some stuff up in my attic that will work out. Okay, let's remove all the intake plumbing first, starting with the turbo inlet hose. After the hoses are removed, out comes the stock air box, and finally that dream-killing resonator box. After rummaging around a bit, the first part I found was this old, unused K&N filter that I had from my old turbo Miata. Hey, this might work. I also found this old Spectre cone filter adapter that amazingly bolted right up to the Fig's mass airflow sensor. No kidding, I've had this thing unopened in a box for at least 15 years. I just always had a feeling that it would come in handy someday. So here's version 1 of my DIY Figaro high-flow air intake system, cobbled together from old parts and stuff I had lying around. The little pipe that deletes the resonator box is actually a stock intercooler pipe from my old Galant VR4. I'm calling this version 1 because it's really a proof of concept. If it works well and doesn't make any obnoxious noises, I'll make a version 2 that's cleaner and simpler. Okay, on to the next mod. If you've seen my old videos, you know I'm a huge fan of water and alcohol injection. I've been running it on my turbo cars for almost 20 years with excellent results. Since the Figaro comes from the factory without an intercooler, I thought it would be interesting to see if I can make similar improvements to the Figgy's fun-sized turbo 4-cylinder. Now in the last 10 years or so, advancements in pump designs, progressive controllers, tanks, and other components have made alcohol injection more mainstream and a pretty common choice for folks who own turbo or supercharged vehicles and want the most performance out of their pump gas. So here's how it works. A reservoir installed in your car will hold water or a mixture of water and alcohol or water and methanol. Connected to the reservoir is a pump. When a pressure switch connected to your engine sees a certain amount of boost, the switch activates the pump. The pump then sucks the water and alcohol mixture from the reservoir and injects it into the engine's airstream via a spray nozzle attached before the throttle body. It sprays a really fine mist, far too fine to hydrolock an engine. The net result is cooler intake charges and a drastic reduction in knock and detonation. There is also a steam cleaning effect for your cylinder head and valves. The reduction in knock or detonation means that you'll be able to run more boost, timing, and get far better and more consistent performance from pump gas. If you'd like more information on this topic, a quick Google search will keep you pretty busy. Alright, let's get to work installing it on the Fig. Once again, this is an experiment of sorts, so I'm raiding my leftover parts bin to put this kit together. First up is the pump. This purpose-built alcohol injection pump was on my old Talon, and after testing it, still works great. Attached to it is the old solenoid that we'll use too. Next up is the pressure switch that activates the system, a relay and harness, an injection nozzle from my old Turbo Mirage, a box of miscellaneous brass fittings, and a length of high-pressure fuel injection hose. I'm using the Fig's washer fluid reservoir as our alcohol tank, and after removing the washer pump, I found a 3/8 hose fitting plugged into the pump inlet perfectly. Nice! Space is at a real premium under the hood, and I really don't want to clutter up the engine bay, so I'm going to mount the pump in the inner fender area where there's tons of room. There's even a perfectly placed access hole right next to the washer tank. We can run our feed line from the tank right through here. To mount the pump assembly, I needed to whip up a bracket. I started by making a quick mock-up using this scrap piece of flexible punched flat bar. There we go, not too fancy, but really sturdy. Next I mounted the pump and solenoid to the bracket and wired it all up. Now it's time to mount the assembly in place. Oh yeah, that'll work. Next I drilled and tapped the charge pipe for the injection nozzle and mounted it in place. With that finished, it's time to wire everything up according to the schematic. To make sure the system functions well for years to come, I like to use high-quality heat shrink connectors, good wire, and high-temperature loom to protect everything. After checking that the wiring and boost switch were working properly, it was time to fill the tank with the 50/50 distilled water and denatured alcohol mixture, check for leaks, and test it out. To do this, I pressurized the system with a hand pump. This also allows me to set when the system will activate. I'm going to start at 6 psi and adjust it up or down from there after a few test drives. So here's the system installed and ready to go. My goal was to keep a low profile, and I think I did all right, as the only components you can really see are the relay here and the injection nozzle. So after a few short test drives around town, it became apparent that even though I used the smallest injection nozzle that I had on hand, it was far too big for the Fig. Under boost, I would get a little bogging sensation, explained best by the images you see here. So a smaller nozzle is in order. To fix this, I sat down at my computer, pulled up devilzone.com and ordered some cool stuff. First up was their low-profile nozzle holder, which is great for tight spaces and has a built-in connector for their high-pressure nylon tubing. Screwed into that fitting is one of their excellent micro-droplet nozzles in the tiny DO1 size. To complement those parts, I ordered a length of their heavy-duty nylon tubing and an adapter so I can easily run this nylon tubing from my pump solenoid directly to the new nozzle. Alright, let's install this stuff. First up is the new straight fitting for the outlet of my water solenoid. I just removed the old fitting and screwed the new one in place. This will be much more convenient than the big, bulky, high-pressure fuel injection hose that I ran to my old nozzle.
It's nozzle test time now. Let's see how it sprays.
So here's the finished product. Okay, so after a few more laps around town, the new alcohol injection nozzle works perfectly, and version 1 of the intake made a pretty nice improvement too. So given how well version 1 of our intake worked out, let's jump right to Fig intake version 2. I want the setup to look good, so my first job was to remove that extra aluminum that was hanging out around the edges of the mass airflow sensor and generally looked like poop in my opinion. To clean this up, I removed the filter adapter from the mass airflow meter and got to trimming. Okay, that looks much better. Then I removed this old cobbled together version to make way for our new intake setup. First up was this 1 3/4 inch to 2.5 inch silicone adapter. Next, I cut a section of 2.5 inch steel pipe and slid it in place, followed by the mass airflow sensor and air filter. Then I whipped up a simple support bracket to keep things from flopping about. My next task was to reattach the stock crankcase breather hose. That looks good. After tightening everything up, plugging in the mass airflow, and painting the intake pipe, here's the finished product. This should flow far better than our tiny diameter stock intake piping, which was riddled with twists, turns, and other nonsense. Thank you for watching, and thank you to the Nissan Figaro Owners Club for their help and excellent resources online. Be sure to check out my Facebook page for updates and other fun stuff too. In the next installment, I'll just go ahead and let the mod bug chew me to pieces while I build a high-flow but low-key turbo back exhaust system. So with that said, thanks again folks, we'll see you next time.